quiz. Question number 1. The United States was discovered by A. Christopher Columbus, B. the Vikings, C. the Packers, or D. Salt and Peppa hip-hop diva Spinderella. Question number 2. The United States legislature is comprised of A. the Supreme Court and the appellate courts, B. the House of Representatives and the Senate, C. the House of Pancakes and Beefaroo, or D. cheaters, liars, and rapists. Bye. Now, hopefully, most of you thought that that quiz was pretty simple. Well, it should have been. I wrote it. And I'm pretty simple. But, according to the June 30th, 2000 issue of the Chicago Sun-Times, when over 550 college freshmen were given a similar quiz, 80% received a failing grade. Dr. James Lowen of the University of Vermont states that students today simply don't know their history. I mean, let's face it, most of us know more about a continental breakfast than we do about the Continental Congress. And most of us would prefer French toast or Denny's Moons over my hammy to both. So for this reason, I felt that it was essential that I speak at this leadership conference today. How can we be expected to be the leaders of the future if we don't understand the sacrifices of our past? So today, we'll examine the loss of our past by first studying up on the problem, second, doing a last-minute cram session on the causes, and finally, testing out some solutions to help us discover our past and take it back to the future. Just without Michael J. Fox. Sorry. Alright, now before I go on, I've got to admit that if someone would have come up to me a couple days ago and asked me to list the accomplishments of my forefathers, I probably would have just responded with, well, I haven't heard my foremothers complaining any lately. So, obviously, this is a problem which, up until now, we've dealt with in much of the same ways we deal with our cousin Cleet. He's the one who only wants to talk about NASCAR and the finer points of earwax removal. I mean, we know that the problem's there, but we hope that if we just ignore it long enough, it'll simply disappear. But much like Cleet's waxy buildup, this is not a problem that's just going to solve itself. This problem of historical ignorance is by no means a new phenomenon. In the mid-1980s, best-selling books by Alan Bloom and E.D. Hirsch pointed out the disparity between the knowledge of a college grad of the 1980s and the more informed graduate of the early 1900s. Now, this isn't exactly groundbreaking research. I mean, think about it. Of course they did better than we do today. We've got 90 more years of stuff to know. I mean, in 1911, they only had half of the presidents, no world wars, and only like 14 states or so. However, the previously mentioned history test administered to 550 college freshmen, where the average score was of 53%, does support Hirsch and Bloom's claims. 53%. Man, that's like less than half. And this in turn has caused critics to redirect their blame from universities to high schools. According to the November 11, 1995 Patriot Ledger, when similar tests were administered to high school students, they produced strikingly similar results. In fact, when asked who President Andrew Jackson was, 75% assumed that he was an original member of the Jackson 5, and that he fell somewhere between Tito and LaToya. So, what has caused this historic Alzheimer's to set in during our teenage years? Well, there are multiple culprits which we can examine. The first problem is, to many, quite frankly, history is boring. James Lowen points out that students ranked history the most irrelevant of the 21 subjects commonly taught in high school, even ranking behind fan favorites such as hygiene fundamentals and Guatemalan irrigation techniques of the Renaissance. Students today simply don't see how American history will ever benefit them if they don't desire to win Ben Stein's money. And the attempt to combat this whole boredom issue has led to the second cause of our historic ineptness. You see, too many history educators have begun turning to Hollywood's celluloid textbook, which is far more concerned with proper lighting and a blockbuster cast than they are with historical accuracy. Well, last year in my U.S. history class alone, we watched JFK, Malcolm X, Saving Private Ryan, Schindler's List, Nixon, Platoon, Amistad, The Untouchables, and Weekend at Bernie's. Now, as entertaining as these films may have been, Weekend at Bernie's aside, these Hollywood versions of history have one glaring problem. They are Hollywood's versions of history. In her book, Practicing History, Barbara W. Tuchman states that studios have no apparent qualms about portraying hearsay as fact, eliminating what they deem insignificant detail, or even inventing their own details to make our history a little more interesting. Well, what do you mean the Wonder Bra wasn't standard issue uniform during the Korean War? Look, if I say Drew Barrymore wears short shorts and a tube top in Korea, then darn it, she'll be the hottest GI in all of South America. Yeah. So, logic would tell us that if we simply avoid this blockbuster approach to education, stick with the old-fashioned textbooks, everything would be just fine. Yeah. And logic would also tell us that Weekend at Bernie's 1 was enough. In his 1995 national bestseller, Lies My Teacher Told Me, James Loewen states that textbooks often supply irrelevant and even erroneous detail. Shockingly, Loewen points out that your typical history textbook contains an average of 15 factual errors. In fact, one of these such errors even caused me to spend most of my childhood thinking that the Pilgrims came to the New World on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Korea, with Dasher, Dancer, and Chow Yun-Fat leading the way. With textbooks as reliable as this, it's no wonder we young Americans don't know our own history. But now, this problem of historical ignorance is not an unconquerable one. There are numerous possibilities to help decrease this problem. The first solution should be an obvious one. If textbooks are wrong, fix them. Now, the second solution lies within the classroom. Our present-day educators need to stop telling their students that the only relevance history serves is to pass some test. They must instead stress the value of the curriculum. Colonial Williamsburg historian Julie Richter states that history is important because in order to understand ourselves, we must first understand our past. Additionally, there's no need to banish all film from the classroom. However, it must be used to augment what is being taught, not the means by which we are taught. When discrepancies between fact and film occur, we need to point them out, discuss them, and then, as a class, write threatening letters to the film's producers, telling them to get their facts straight or we'll light their children on fire. Finally, in a nation of pointing fingers and blaming the additives in our cereal for all of society's ills, we need to point that accusatory finger right back at ourselves. As future leaders of America, we need to start taking responsibility today. If you're unhappy with your knowledge of American history, well, here's an idea. Go to the library. They got books there. Take it upon yourself to find out about the checks and balances, or what the 21st Amendment to the Constitution is. It's simple. We're here in this room today learning to be effective leaders because of all that our effective leaders of the past have done to guarantee us this right. Now it's our turn. We need to make sure that it doesn't stop here. So today, we've examined America's historical ignorance by illustrating the problem itself, labeling some of its causes, and exploring some simple solutions. So all right, it's time for that final quiz. American history is important to us because A, it gives us a deeper understanding of ourselves. B, it helps us appreciate the sacrifices of our forefathers. C, it provides basis for modern day decisions. Or D, all of the above.